Hello, this is Grandy Kipp, your story lady. Today I'm going to read you a very special story that I wrote. It means a lot to me. It's called The Angel Who Couldn't Fly. It's kind of on the long side and maybe best for kids 10 years and older. The Angel Who Couldn't Fly. This is the story of an angel who couldn't fly. How can that be, you ask? All angels can fly. How would they get from heaven to earth and back to do God's work? How would they bring back stories of miracles on earth to share with all the other angels? How would they be able to flutter so close to God for hugs and kisses from the wondrous arms and smile of the one who invited them to do their angel work? How could they if they couldn't fly? Sitting on the most beautiful cloud in her part of the sky was an angel named Lumina. Her beauty was visible in every sparkle in her eyes when she closed them to pray and when she opened them to smile. Gold dust flew from her hair when she laughed. Many-colored butterflies decorated her curls, and the tiniest hummingbirds in heaven came to kiss her mouth each time she opened it to speak. Each feather on her wings was perfectly shaped and incredibly white. They rested on each other in such a perfect fashion that when Lumina spread those magnificent wings, which stretched farther than you can imagine, a vibration of music filled the air and caused nearby cherubim to rush to her side. That is, when she opened her wings. For Lumina rarely opened and stretched out her remarkable wings. Occasionally, when something delighted her so completely, she would giggle and wiggle and without thinking spread her wings as if to fly. But Lumina did not fly. She did not leave her cloud and swoop through the heavens and then gracefully and steadfastly make her way to earth. Tears formed and drowned the sparkles in her eyes as she remained fixed on her cloud. God knew about Lumina. He watched her as he moved about his heavens and listened with great interest to reports and concerns from the other angels who observed Lumina glistening and occasionally fluttering on the loveliest cloud in her part of heaven. And so God began to give Lumina some help. On Mondays, he sent rain. On Tuesdays, he sent snow and ice and bitter cold. On Wednesdays, he sent roses. On Thursdays, he caused Lumina's cloud to shake and dip until she nearly fell off. On Fridays, he sent his heavenly choir to sing with her all the day long. On Saturdays, he sent Archangel Michael in all his splendid battle attire. Michael shook his mighty sword and lowered his head repeatedly for Lumina as her arms reached out to him. He hovered just far enough from her cloud that she could not easily reach him without flying into the rainbows that flashed around him. Hard though she tried to reach out, she carefully and deliberately kept her angel feet on her cloud. On Sunday mornings, just after he smiled at the sun, God visited his beloved angel who could not fly. He lingered only moments, as he had many angels to visit and many gifts to bestow. And in those moments, He kissed Lumina's sparkling angel eyes and brushed her exquisite soft wings with his beautiful hands. He stroked them from her shoulders out to the very last feathers at the tips, and Lumina trembled with his patience and love. "You will fly, one day you will fly." He blessed her and then attended briefly to the hummingbirds and butterflies and precious cherubim surrounding her. Lumina spent the rest of the day in meditation, sitting on her cushion cloud, watching herself breathe in and breathe out. Other angels flying by noticed her sitting quietly on her cloud, her wings fluttering slightly from time to time. Though her eyes remained closed, they could see the sparkles slipping out from between her lashes and resting on her face. They were sad to see Lumina sitting so still, not looking about with her usual eagerness as she waited in anticipation for a miracle to come her way. In the midst of one Monday's rain, in the dark and dreary sky, two cherubim collided in their rush to be close to Lumina. They wanted to be nearby in case she spread her wings and the music started. The sound of tiny, startled voices reached Lumina's ears before she saw the two baby angels clutching the edge of her cloud, their wings crumpled and wet, bruises on their rosy cheeks, looking nothing like messengers of joy and innocence. Without stopping to think, Lumina gathered the two cherubim up in her arms to comfort and sing to them. When she sang, her voice sounded like violins and cellos, rich and full, light and sweet tasting. As she brushed kisses across their faces and carefully set their wings properly back in place, her song trembled with emotion and vibrato. The strength of her song shook wisps of her cloud free. She did not notice them darting off to distant parts of heaven, taking with them the sound of her melody through the rain. On Tuesday, as the ice and snow lay caked on her wings, Lumina spotted a frozen butterfly as it fell from her hair. Quickly, she gathered the wee creature in her own icy hands and brought it close to her mouth. Gently, softly, carefully, Lumina forced her warm breath onto the gasping, dying butterfly. Forgetting her own shivering body and chattering teeth, she breathed over the miniature being for hours, all the while whispering to it, "You will fly, you will fly." That night, as the snow and ice and cold began to disappear, Lumina watched the butterfly stretch its wings once again. It flew slowly in circles before her face, gathering momentum, and finally darted back into her hair, tucking itself once again into a golden ringlet close to Lumina's ear. The little being whispered to her, as she had to it, "You helped me fly again. I will never forget." The next Wednesday, when Lumina first turned her face to greet the sun, she discovered a very small cloud just to the right of her beautiful heavenly place. It appeared to be a gypsy cloud. They quietly and fancifully wander through heaven, not being quite large enough for an angel to really stretch out and rest upon. Of course, nothing in heaven is too small to use for something. This diminutive wanderer was floating just out of Lumina's reach. but close enough for her to enjoy every inch of its precious space, on which was growing a gorgeous rose bush. At first, each flower presented itself as an elegant bud. Petals wrapped around each other and leaves glistening with dewdrops that appeared to have danced from her eyes across the short distance from cloud to cloud. As Lumina watched, the flowers slowly opened, revealing a journey of color from the tip of each petal into its heart. The creamiest ivory became a deep scarlet blush, a breathtaking splash of color in a pastel heavenly space. Oh, how Lumina tried to reach the swaying flowers, which begged to be held and sniffed and drawn lovingly across her cheeks. They were, sadly, a little too far away. No matter how she stretched and concentrated on growing her arms long enough to pluck the roses, Lumina could not. She would have to fly across to have the joy offered by such an incredible bush of roses. Yet she was unable to release herself for such a gift. Thursday found Lumina frantically holding on to any spot on her cloud that she could grab with her hands. She feared she would fall into endless space, unable to fly to another cloud in order to wait for the shaking and dipping on hers to finally stop. Several angels flew by and stopped to offer their help. 2 a.m, just after the shaking began, they reached out to Lumina and repeatedly offered to fly her to a nearby vacant cloud. She was so busy clutching her cloud, her face buried in it up to her ears, that she waved the 2 angels away with her wingtips. She did not even know when they finally gave up and left her to struggle on her own. Soon after, a strange, disheveled angel with feathers awry stopped to give advice, to tell Lumina how to hold on properly so she could ride out the dipping and the shaking. This time Lumina was able to look at the angel who offered to advise her. "How can this one be of any help to me?" she thought to herself. "She can't even take care of herself, let alone another in trouble." Lumina waved the concerned angel away as her tears began to flow. "Where is an angel who can truly help me? Where is my miracle?" And she continued to hold tightly in any way she could. The afternoon passed into evening. Lumina grew more fearful and exhausted as she began to slip precariously for what seemed like the last effortful time within her. The scrambling angel heard another angel voice. It was one of the 2 angels who had offered to help in the early morning light. She had returned alone to view Lumina's progress, if any. Silently, just a bit away from the gyrating cloud, the angel hovered, finally seen by Lumina. A weary Lumina, cheeks streaked with tears, feathers out of place and wings trembling, softly called out to the observing angel nearby, "Will you please help me? But only if you have a moment. I don't want to be a burden." The other angel smiled at Lumina while gently clearing her angel voice. Her words sounded like a piccolo, soft around the edges, clear and precise in direction. "I have as much time as you require. I shall stay with you until the disruption subsides." And she did. Lumina spent Friday in song with God's heavenly choir. As she blended her voice with the other, she sometimes wept and sometimes laughed, so thoroughly delighted to be singing in the company of such glorious angels. Among those who sang with her was the frumpy-looking one who had offered advice the day before. Lumina noticed her clear and passionate voice. It made her smile, and the frumpy angel smiled back. When Lumina turned to see Archangel Michael at close distance on Saturday morning, she quivered at his presence. The words that resounded in her head were at once new and old. She hadn't spoken them for an eternity. I have created a miracle, Lumina thought, and reached out to the mighty-looking angel. Can you fly with me? I so want to fly. Michael's presence shone so brightly that Lumina thought she might never stop blinking. Sparkles filled the air and covered her face. The butterflies that nestled in her golden hair at once all flew out together, settling into a many-colored halo around Lumina's head. Red and green hummingbirds hovered close to her mouth, their rapidly beating wings sending those sparkles to the farthest parts of heaven. And in the very next moment, Lumina was in the arms of the archangel, who spun her around him and then off into flight, following close by. Rainbows flashed as Lumina swooped and twirled. Her flying was a ballet of leaps and spins and soaring through the heavens. She discovered she could fly as fast or as slow as she wanted. She could hover close to a cherubim or dart quickly from cloud to cloud, visiting the angels who rested there. I feel free, Lumina sang as she returned to her cloud. Before she settled down for the night, she practiced flying around her precious cloud, tucking in the few pieces which had separated themselves and were floating nearby. She stretched her incredible wings and then wrapped them around herself. Lumina then snuggled so deeply into the billows of her cloud that she could hardly be seen. God could see her resting there in her newfound freedom, and he smiled to himself. Sunday morning, after Lumina awoke and stretched, she sang a glorious melody for the cherubim while tending to her hummingbirds and butterflies. She sat on her cushioned cloud for a while, just breathing in and breathing out. As she rose again, she gave a gentle pat to her cloud, stretched out her perfect white wings, and took flight. Gracefully and steadfastly, she made her way to earth, vapor trails of freedom following her as she flew. Lumina touched down hard when she landed, causing the sand on the beach to scatter and whirl about like dervishes, and the tall, slender plume grass to bend so deeply they thrashed about the dunes, carving their silhouettes in the sand. Nearby sat a young woman, her arms wrapped around her knees. She was dressed warmly in the early morning chill and sat almost motionless, watching the ocean rush in and rush out on her lonely stretch of beach. Lumina watched her shivering shoulders. She noticed her tears and listened to her sighs. She looks as if she cannot move from that spot, thought Lumina. She flew closer, and the woman suddenly looked around. Lumina was not hiding, but she was hard to see. The young woman squinted to focus her eyes, yet all she could see was a luminescence just to her right. Lumina spread her wings with a flourish and then gently encircled the woman, who, feeling suddenly warmer, closed her eyes, folded her arms in her lap, and began to listen to herself breathe in and breathe out. As she listened, she heard a sweet voice whisper in her ear, "You will fly. One day you will fly." The woman unfolded her arms and stretched them toward the sun just coming out from behind the clouds. Slowly she stood, checking to make sure she could see the shimmering light still beside her. And, as if for the first time, she took a step, paused, and began to walk down the beach. Lumina flew along in circles around the young woman, who moved with a new yet remembered freedom. A seagull darted by, shrieking and bobbing his head up and down. Tiny sandpipers ran back and forth close to her feet. Tears sparkled in the woman's eyes as she smiled. Lumina's work had begun.